Now we're going to deal with two chapters and a verse. Sometimes the chapter and verse divisions, again, they were not original to the text. They came in I'm not sure the years, but in the Middle Ages, and as it was a way to kind of help quickly orient where you're reading, or to where to read from. So they're very useful, but sometimes they get in the way of not fitting the context of the original author's flow of thought. It's not a big deal, as long as we're kind of aware of that and kind of learn to kind of read in context and read in a way kind of ignoring that at times, the chapters and verse divisions, that is. Chapters 27 and 28, and I'm including verse 1 of chapter 29 this morning. This is a key section for understanding the rest of the Old Testament. If we catch what God has said here and keep this in mind when we go into the books of history and the prophetic books, we're going to go, oh, yeah, this is why this is happening, or this is why that happened. God said this is what was going to happen. If you follow me as a nation, I'm going to give you these material blessings. Your borders are going to be secure. Your harvests are going to be good. You're going to have peace. There's not going to be disease. All these things. And if you don't follow me, if you reject me, if you rebel against me as a nation, your borders aren't going to be secure. Your harvests aren't going to be great. You're going to see disease and plagues happen. And if you continue, you're going to be exiled from the land. But again, notice the dynamic. If your borders aren't secure, God's purpose in that was to get the people's attention. Look, you're giving your allegiance elsewhere. Come back to me. If you remember that I am your God and you are my people, then we'll go back to the blessing side of the ledger sheet. Now, here's something I want to say, and because this is sometimes a point of confusion. We don't live in this covenant anymore. This dynamic where if I obey God, I'm going to see these particular blessings. And if I disobey God, I'm going to see these particular curses, absent of blessing. The theology that would say, oh, you're sick, you must be sinning. That is not understanding the context of this chapter in its setting and the story of the Bible well at all. If we think that this is the dynamic the church should be experiencing, we're not understanding the story arc of Scripture at all. We live in a new covenant. The old covenant is obsolete. It's the book of Hebrews. It means this dynamic is no longer in force, and that includes for the nation of Israel, the Jewish people. This covenant is done. It has been superseded by Jesus and the covenant he's brought for all people, Jew and Gentile, slave and free, male and female. But these two chapters are vitally important for understanding what is going on in the rest of the Old Testament and for understanding the nature of covenant today. Yes, we live in a different covenant, has different kind of sets of blessings and curses. But the dynamic that is the same is, as Israel was called to live in loyalty and obedience and allegiance to Yahweh, the church is called to live in allegiance and obedience and loyalty to Jesus. Israel was called to reflect God. As the church, we're called to reflect God. And so what's here that we see is God saying, I will act to help you know when you're walking out of step. And so that's why, and I have this conversation usually multiple times a year with different people, that they're struggling with something. They're going through a health concern, or they're going through a financial crisis, and they can be struggling with the questions, or sometimes they have, I'll be gracious, well-meaning people who go, hey, you're struggling with this? You got to confess that sin, or, what's going on, or, what have you done? And put pressure and even guilt or shame. When As we read the scriptures, the New Testament, Jesus goes, that's not the dynamic of how this works. It's a lot more nuanced. And it is, here we see God saying, I will show you, I will tell you where you're going off course. So again, encourage you, read these chapters, but think of, if you know what you know of Old Testament history and how the nation of Israel was dealt with by God through to the time of when Assyria and Babylon and then the exile and after the exile, and see if this helps make sense of how God worked and why. So, question for us. How do we respond to God's correction? See, God's correction is not condemnation. Again, the book of Hebrews, God disciplines those he loves. He's treating us as his children. When good parents discipline their children, it's not to condemn them and to throw them out. It's to help them see there's a better or a right way to do things, or a right way of seeing things, where the actions they've taken are harmful to themselves, to others, within the family. And so how do we respond to God's correction? Are we looking for it? Are we listening for it? That was one of the problems of Israel. They failed to listen. And so God had to speak louder and louder. God doesn't want to speak loudly. God is looking to walk with us and keep shaping us. So just listen for the voice of Jesus and allow him to shape you, even when it's hard and we have to confess and repent. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And today would you know his peace. God bless.